Hi, it's Penny, and as usual, I'm here to talk about some bookish things. Today, in honor of Mermay, which is happening at the moment, and also my somewhat mermaidy hair, I wanted to talk about books about mermaids. I really love books about mermaids, and I have a list here of ones that I've read. Most of them quite recent releases, but not all of them. So I'm going to share those ones with you, and I'm also hoping that if you have read any great mermaid books that you will leave them down in the comments so that I can go and read them. So once you've watched this video, you can check down there as well for more mermaidy recommendations. So we're going to start with the scariest mermaid book on my list because that's my favorite kind of mermaid. And that is The Mermaids in Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. So if you don't know, Mira Grant is the pen name for Sean M. Maguire, who amongst many other things wrote the Wayward Children series. But Into the Drowning Deep is nothing like that. In the prequel to Into the Drowning Deep, there is this documentary crew and also a bunch of scientists who have all gone out into the ocean to try and find signs of mermaids or sirens. And the footage that came back shows them being killed viciously by these horrible creatures. People aren't really sure whether it is a hoax or not, but in Into the Drowning Deep, we follow a second documentary crew and group of scientists going out to try and investigate the death of the first crew, as well as continuing the research into these mermaid-type creatures. A lot of the characters that are on the ship also have personal links to the initial crew, so that adds another level to things. But these mermaids were so scary, but also just so wonderfully different from any other mermaids that I've ever read about. So if scary mermaids are your thing, Into the Drowning Deep is definitely the book for you. Also, Sean M. Maguire has said that if enough people read it, she will be able to justify writing a sequel, and I would love a sequel. So please do that. I also want to mention another short story by Sean M. Maguire that had mermaids in it. So this is a short story called Daughter of the Midway, the Mermaid, and the Open Lonely Sea. And it was included in the Carney Punk anthology that was edited by Rachel Kane. Now, I remember that there were a lot of books in that anthology that I was a bit shaky on, but Daughter of the Midway, the Mermaid, and the Open Lonely Sea, that's a long title, but I really loved it. I thought it was a really unique look at mermaids. Again, I think what Sean M. Maguire is really good at is coming up with these unique ways of addressing different topics. So in this one, we follow this girl who is part of a carnival, and her mother is in the carnival as the mermaid. And she has to deal with her mother being slightly strange because she's a mermaid. And then they drive into this town where she has to confront her mother's past. It's only a really short story, but I really liked it, and I would like to read it again. The next mermaid book I have is The Mermaid by Christina Henry. So this story is told in a very fairy tale type way, at least in the beginning, and it tells the story of this mermaid who falls in love with this fisherman and grows old with him. But as she is very long-lived, eventually the fisherman dies and she has to decide what to do next with her life. She ends up getting involved with P.T. Barnum and his freak show, and I really liked the way it investigated what that freak show experience might have been like for a real mermaid, and also her fighting to still have the same rights as a human woman would. And another mermaid book is The Mermaid and Mrs. Hancock by Imogen Hermes Goa. So this book was strange. It's kind of a historical fiction. We follow this man, Mr. Hancock, and he owns a bunch of ships and ends up getting his hands on this dead mermaid baby. Maybe that's what it is. Possibly. And he starts putting it on show, and through that he gains a bunch of notoriety, and he has to kind of deal with the impacts it has on his life. At the same time, we follow this older woman who has been making her money by being a mistress to different rich men. Now that she's getting older, her current flame has kind of let her go, and she has to figure out what she's going to do with her life next. She's a bit upset about it. Obviously, she ends up meeting Mr. Hancock, and there is some other really weird mermaid stuff that happens. Although I will say, I actually think the second mermaid that's in this book, and it's spoilers to say anything about it, but I thought it was such a cool concept. And it's not even clear as to whether it's even real, but if it is real, then that's cool. if you've read The Mermaid and Mrs. Hancock, I would love to talk to you about that second kind of mermaid. So just the last few mermaid books are all the romancy type ones that are a little bit more standard, I guess. So firstly we have To Kill a Kingdom by Alexander Christo. This was very popular just a little while ago, although I think the reviews were very split. Personally, I didn't think it was that amazing, but I can see that some people would like it. It is a Little Mermaid retelling, except that the prince is a mermaid killer. He goes out and tries to track down mermaids and kill them because the mermaids are very dark and violent and they kill people as well. And we follow this princess mermaid who also every year on her birthday goes out and kills a prince and keeps his heart. So obviously they are trying to kill each other, but it's a Little Mermaid retelling, so there's some romance instead. We also have The Siren by Kara Cass, and this one I really liked the siren concept. I think I'm using mermaids and sirens interchangeably here, but they're not exactly the same. So what I really loved about The Siren is that the ocean was a character in the story, and it had a relationship with these three women that were its sirens. And every now and then the ocean calls on the sirens to come out into the ocean and basically lure a ship full of people to drown themselves. And I think they're committed to doing this for the ocean for 100 years or something, and while they're doing that, they are basically immortal, they can't die. So we follow one of the sirens as she deals with the reality of living in that way, and she starts a romance with this boy, which, as you know, I don't normally like romance that much, but I felt this one was quite realistic, so it didn't bother me that much. And really, it was just quite a lovely little story. The last mermaid book I will talk about is Home from the Sea by Mercedes Lackey. So this is actually the 7th book in Mercedes Lackey's Elemental Masters series, and in this series, every story is like a fairy tale retelling, except it's set in Europe, kind of mid-20th century, around the time when all the wars were happening. And there's these people who have different elemental powers. This particular book wasn't my favorite book of the series, but it is a different twist on the mermaid concept because it isn't actually mermaids, it's actually selkies. So selkies are these seal type creatures that can turn themselves into human and back again. And the main girl in the story is a selkie. Although she's been separated from her people for a long time, and this story kind of deals with her meeting up with the main Selkie family again. Unfortunately, nothing really happens until like the last 3 pages, but still, if you want to read a book about Selkies, which are not exactly mermaids, but they're close, then maybe you could pick up that one. Lastly, I also just wanted to mention a couple of mermaid books that I haven't read, but they came out last year, and I do have them on my list as something I would be interested in reading if I ever get time. The first one is The Surface Breaks by Louise O'Neill. I believe this is another Little Mermaid retelling. I've heard some people say that it pushes the feminist agenda quite heavy, and others saying that it completely fails at that. So I would be quite interested in reading it to find out my own opinion. And the last mermaid book to talk about is Sea Witch by Sarah Henning. So this one I believe is kind of a Little Mermaid prequel in that it tells the story of Ursula and the Little Mermaid's mother before the main story of the Little Mermaid. So those are a whole bunch of mermaid books. You may have noticed that I don't actually own any of these mermaid books. Normally I just read books from the library, and only if books become my favorite books do I bother getting them in physical form. I do have on my list to buy Into the Drowning Deep because that is definitely one of my favorites. But despite being really interested in mermaid books, that's the only book on my favorite list that is a mermaid book. So I really want to find some more favorite mermaid books. So if you know of any other great mermaid books out there that I haven't talked about, please remember to post them down in the comments so that we can all read them. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are having a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.